Hi, my 4B Explorers! Happy Wednesday! I'm really excited to talk to you about this habitat today, but I'm also kind of upset about it because we're on our last habitat that we'll be covering in first grade. It is the hottest, it is the driest, and it's definitely sandier than any habitat or beach you've ever laid your eyes on. I'm talking about the desert, home to camels, home to, well, cowboys back in the day, and home to many nomads, which are people who travel around and don't stay in one home for too long. They travel around the world and the savannah or the desert, and they live off that land. Though, if you think about it, what do you already know about a desert? Something I know is that there's not much water and there's not much food or plants to go around to make food. So, knowing that, it's amazing that there's some people who know so much about the desert or the end of the savannah that they're able to live there. I will show you a couple pictures of the desert. Here they are. You can see that really only a cactus or a succulent, which is a type of plant that's like a cactus that needs very little water. They're really the only plants that can survive in this hot, hot area because there are no trees or there's not many mountains and there's not much grass to soak up the sun. The sun is hitting the desert so hard. If you look here, you'll see a map of the whole world. Wherever it's yellow, that's where a desert falls. So you can see in the south of our country, North America, and in Mexico, in the Middle East, above Asia, to the side of Europe, to the top and bottom parts of Africa. Most of Australia is a desert, and then parts of South America are deserts. That's because when the sun is hitting directly onto the land, it's difficult for things to grow because the sun is so big and it is so powerful and hot. If you go down to Florida, you'll notice that it's a lot hotter than it is here in New Jersey. But if you go up north to Canada or Michigan or Maine or Vermont, go further north, you'll see that it's colder on most days. That's because of how much of that area is getting sun. A desert gets so much sun that it could be up to 100 or more degrees every day. But because that area has really nothing to trap in that heat from the sun, once the sun sets, deserts can actually get really cold to temperatures that we get during the winter. That's because, unlike maybe a room would be able to do, or outside with our trees and our leaves and our water, we're not able to trap that much sun if we're in a desert because it's just sand. So that's why, even though it's incredibly hot during the day when that sun's hitting it right on, when that sun sets at nighttime, it becomes freezing. And so animals need to adapt not only for that hot, dry, sandy place we know the desert to be, but also for when it gets cold at night. Now, I know we said that it can get cold, but did you know that it also barely rains in a desert? I have a measuring tape right here, and I'm going to show you 10 inches. This is 10 inches, not even a foot. If I were to put that straight up here, yep, there you go. If I were to put that straight up here, this is how much water in the whole year, if you poured it into a bucket, this is how high your water would get in your bucket for how much rain was in the desert that year. If you can look back at the past week, we've had way more water than the desert would ever get in a year. That's because the sun is so strong in that area that the rain does not get evaporated up into the clouds. It's not getting sucked up once it's rained. It's just getting down into the sand, and there's not enough for it to evaporate in order to make it a rain cloud. The desert is fascinating and one of the most confusing places. If you look at today's post, you'll see that I have 2 videos on the desert. It's kind of interesting. Ask yourself, Why are there no Disney movies that take place in the desert or fun videos that take place in the desert and cartoons? Probably because the desert is known for being incredibly hot and difficult to live in. But if you look at these videos, you'll see some people who do live in the desert and what they do to survive, what the people do to adapt. Let's see about what the animals do. If you look down here, I have the list of animals like normal. We have birds, we have mammals. I don't believe we do have a reptile, but I don't believe we have any amphibians, correct? Yes, correct. We have a good group of animals that we're learning about in the desert. It's, of course, not the most, well, busy with animals, but the desert does have some of the coolest adaptations. What these animals do to survive is really fascinating. Let's look at today's packet. If you go to classwork and scroll down to your science Flipgrids, and you'll see that there's only one more packet in Flipgrid for you to do. I can't wait to see who your favorite animal is from the desert habitat, because these animals are really interesting. But also, now that you're done your desert habitat Flipgrid, or once you are done it, you'll be done all your Flipgrids for our habitats. And then you'll get to start picking which animal you think you should do for your project. We'll talk more about that on Monday, but it's fun to start thinking of which animal was your favorite altogether, not only from these packets here, but also from that list of animals that I would post every day. You'll get to pick one of those animals to do your project on. So here you have the desert habitat. This probably looks pretty close, even though it's a drawing, to what you think of when you think of the desert. Hot, dry air, there's not much water or not much moisture in the air. This is called a mesa. A mesa is a flat mountain or big giant rocks. There's sandy plains. Oh, we know the word plains from the savannah, a long, wide, open land, not with much grass or bushes. And then here it says cacti. I always thought it was called a cactus. Did you know that one cactus is called a cactus, but just like you could call a pack of wolves a group, or, maybe a herd of sheep, a group of cactus are called cacti. So if you have two, you won't say I have two cactuses, you would say I have two cacti. That makes it easier for the mouth to say. So a desert's very hot and dry, and they're covered in flat, sandy plains that go on for miles. Because there's not much water, if you go into a desert, you need to make sure that you don't only have a water bottle, but you have the biggest water bottle and buckets that you could have. But you have to also be careful because the water can heat up and therefore be very difficult to drink. I like to have this page so you can see what kind of meshes into a desert. So you can see at the bottom a forest, which is kind of the opposite of a desert. It has so many trees and bushes, water, mountains, and it definitely gets rain. Eventually that forest will move on and get less trees, less grass, less water and rain, and become a grassland or savanna. So it's kind of, you can see it changing from the forest to the grassland and eventually to the desert. I feel like I need water just teaching about this. Well, once the grassland, that open grassy area, starts to get hotter, the more south we go, the desert becomes more sandy than it does just dirt. And it moves over to kind of what you can imagine a beach to be like, just miles and miles of sand. Now, if you look up here, there are caves. There's caves in savannas, there's caves in deserts and forests and in the Arctic, but caves are very important for animals that live in a desert, because if it's so hot and the sun is so shining that there's no clouds to block it, you need to get out of that sun. Otherwise, you can get burnt or even exhausted and dehydrated. So animals will go into this large underground opening in a mountain or a dirt rock that's called a cave. Can you think of an animal that lives in a cave? A bat. That's the first one I think of, because bats like to hang right up here on top of the cave. Now, if you look in today's list of animals, there is a bat. I chose not to do a bat today because there's so many other animals that are special to the desert. Let's get started. The first animal anyone thinks about is a camel. A camel is famous for its humps on its back, and a camel is famous also because of its ability to survive in a desert without water for so long. All right, so they're kind of like the horses of the desert. I see here that a camel is a mammal. That must mean that it's able to give milk to its baby, and instead of laying eggs, a camel has a baby like a human would. Camels are big. They are brown and they have one or two humps. They can run fast. If you're not busy, I know I already told you to watch a giraffe running. You should definitely watch a camel running. Because they have such weird legs, weird long and knobby legs, they look really silly when they run. They live in deserts. They like the hot. They like the heat. They can live in the cold though. So that's nice. Even though they have light, thin fur so that they can stay cool in the heat, it's the opposite of a polar bear, they're able to survive during the cold nights in a desert. Camels are herbivores. Ding, ding, ding. That's an important word. A carnivore and an herbivore. Those are two types of animals and depending on what they eat. I know a carnivore eats meat, so what do you think an herbivore eats? Interesting though, if you think about it, what an herbivore eats, and we're in a desert, let's see. They eat grass and plants. What? How can a camel eat grass and plants if there's not much growing in a desert? Well, they can eat thorns. Ooh, so I know that a cactus is special for having spikes on it so that people won't eat it. But it seems like the camel was able to train itself to eat thorns. That's crazy. They keep fat in their humps. Okay, so if they need the fat, it's in their humps. And they can go a long time with no water. Right. We can go a little while without water, us humans. We can go maybe a week or 10 days before we really need to get that water bottle stat. But a camel is able to survive longer than that, twice, if not three times longer than what a human can do. And that's because they're storing so much in their body. That fat in their humps, they can make energy. Well, let's hear about their baby. They only can have one baby. It's called a calf. Of course it's called a calf. I feel like at this point, all babies are called calves. If I ever have a baby, I'll call it a calf. Maybe start telling your parents that you're their calves. Calves are big, they are furry, and they can run. They live for 40 to 50 years. Oh my gosh, that's older than some of your parents. A camel could be older than your parents right now. Camels have adaptation. Ding, ding, ding! Smokey, come over here! Camels have adaptation! Okay, let's read about a camel's adaptation. Well, first we have to make that red box. Phew, there we go. Don't worry, Smokey. So Smokey and I highlighted around the word adaptations. Camels have adaptations to help them. Don't forget, my friends, even though it's our last habitat, you still need to be focusing on what an habitat is and what an adaptation is. You know, a habitat is home, and adaptation means to survive, to protect yourself. What do you do to survive? A camel survives in a desert by having their hair block the sun. They have 3 eyelids. Excuse me. A camel has not 1, but 3 eyelids per eye. Why is that? Let's see. They block the sand. Ooh, so of course, if there's any wind, we're not going to have flower petals coming towards us. The sand is going to be incredibly strong coming into the camel's eye. And if the camel is like the horse of the desert. That camel needs to be able to see if it's going to be traveling fast. Their big feet let them run in the sand. Camels are amazing animals, and that's absolutely true. Well, it seems like a camel's fur is able to help them stay cool, but I'm curious to see if it's the fur also helps them stay warm at nighttime. Now, I'm not too sure about that. I would say that the fat in their hump is what helps them when it gets cold out. All right, let's look at our camel diagram. My friend, you only have a few more diagrams until you've become professionals at these animals in our habitats, whether it's the Arctic, the ocean, the rainforest, the savanna, or the desert. In those 5 habitats, you've read about a bunch of animals and even diagrammed half of them. Ooh, fraction, you even diagrammed half of them. And now you know that these animals didn't just come out of their mommy's bellies to live around in their habitat. They grew the way they did so that they could survive certain parts, whether it was heat, cold, rain, water, whatever it was. So let's see, let's find the humps of our camel. Now, I know a hump looks like a mountain, so I would be looking back here. Make sure the arrow is pointing to the correct thing. Hump. There's the humps. Now I know feet would be down there. I see this one, but that looks like it's pointing to a tail. Diagramming is all about being organized and being able to point clearly to something. Eyes. Oh, the eyes would be right up here. I wish it would, if any of you print this out, you should draw on the eyelashes because I would definitely put the eyelashes on there. Here we have the tail. The tail would be great to get flies off of it or to also nicely keep it balanced, maybe hold on to something. And last but not least, it's talking about the ears. Now, what do you think? Do you think sand gets in a camel's ears easily? Well, just like they have the eyelashes to bat away and the eyelids to bat away the sand, I wonder if they do anything with their ears to protect themselves. The other animals we'll be learning about today is a jackrabbit, which is a type of bunny or rabbit that's very fast and lives in the desert. Then we also have the prairie dog, which some of you might think of as a meerkat. They're actually 2 different animals. A meerkat prefers the savanna. Here we have a prairie dog, which could live in a grassland and savanna, but it's known for living in the desert. You should definitely see why a prairie dog is very special with their adaptations. We have the rattlesnake. A rattlesnake is very famous for its tail. I bet a lot of you will be interested in seeing that rattlesnake. Why do you think it's called a rattle? Last, you have the Roadrunner. The Roadrunner is a very special character. Maybe I'll add a video of that. A Roadrunner is an example of a Looney Tunes character that is incredibly fast bird. So you have the Jackrabbit, which is fast, but you also have a Roadrunner. Who do you think would win in a race? And as always, my friends, there's a message for you at the end to make sure you go and do your final Flipgrid. I'll be watching all of your Flipgrids, and of course, you can watch each other's too to see if maybe you have the same animal or a different animal that you liked. Well, my explorers, I'm so happy that we were able to make it through the cold Arctic, diving through the oceans of the world, coming out of the ocean to just get rained on in the rainforest, and then some sun tanning out in the savanna and exploring the sandy mountains of the desert. We were able to go to those 5 habitats, and you learned about and diagrammed dozens and dozens of animals. Next week, we will be thinking of which animals we want to do for our projects, and you'll be doing an All About Me project on that animal, as well as an arts and crafts project. This Friday, although we won't be having science class together, I do have a video that's going to come out about a fun game that I made about all the animals, their habitats, and their adaptations. Play it by yourself, maybe play it with a friend in class as a play date. You can play it together, or play it with your family and see if they know as much as you do about habitats, my explorers. If you have any questions, always let me know, but don't forget to do your Flipgrid and your packet. Bye, explorers!